Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something huge, um, really ancient, the relationship, often seen as a clash between science and spirituality.
It's a big one. For centuries, these two ways of understanding the world seemed fundamentally opposed.
Exactly. And science, especially after Newton, felt like it was pushing the idea of,
Yeah.
a divine creator further and further away, reducing God to maybe just a first cause.
The divine watchmaker idea, yeah. The one who winds up the universe and then, well, steps back.
That view, this kind of separation, it really dominated for a long, long time. Science took the material world, spirituality took what was left, maybe.
That dualism was powerful. It created a sense of an almost unbridgeable gap.
But here's where things get really interesting, and this is what today's deep dive is all about. The last century or so has brought these, frankly, revolutionary scientific discoveries.
Mm-hmm. Discoveries that don't just chip away at that old mechanical picture, they completely shatter it in many ways.
Right. And let's be clear, our goal here isn't to prove or disprove any specific religious belief. That's not what science does, and it's not our aim.
Absolutely not. We're not trying to find God in a physics equation.
No. Instead, our mission today is to explore how cutting-edge physics, we're talking, the very frontiers of understanding reality, might offer us a totally new way, maybe a more integrated way, to think about the divine, about spirituality itself.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond that old conflict narrative. Modern physics, surprisingly perhaps, might provide a new language, a new set of concepts or metaphors.
Metaphors that inspire fresh models of spirituality, ones defined not by separation, but by, what? Immanence, interconnectedness.
Precisely. Immanence, interconnectedness, dynamism, creativity, concepts that seem woven into the fabric of reality, as physics now describes it. Not a static being, but maybe something more like a process.
Okay, so today we're taking you on a journey. We'll be digging into the ideas of the physicist-philosopher David Bohm, who is fascinating, and also the framework of quantum field theory, or QFT.
Two really powerful lenses to look through.
And these aren't just abstract theories for physicists. We think they offer perspectives that can genuinely reshape your understanding, maybe provide some aha moments about reality and your place in it.
So if you've ever wondered if science and spirituality could find common ground, or how the deepest secrets of the universe might touch our spiritual lives, this is for you.
All right. But to really grasp how radical these new ideas are, we need to first properly understand the old story, the worldview that held sway for so long. Let's start with Isaac Newton.
Yes, the Newtonian paradigm. It's hard to overstate its impact. Starting around the 17th century, it painted a picture of the universe as this incredibly grand but ultimately predictable machine, like a giant clock.
And it worked incredibly well, didn't it, for explaining the world we see around us, apples falling, planets orbiting.
Oh, phenomenally well. Its success was undeniable. It gave us Newton's laws of motion, universal gravitation. It provided a sense of order, predictability.
What were its core ideas, basically?
Well, predictable motion was key. You had separate components, particles, planets interacting through forces like gravity, and crucially, if you knew the initial conditions, say, the position and speed of everything.
You could predict the future perfectly.
In theory, yes, and you could work backwards to know the past, too. It was a deterministic universe. Everything followed precise, unbreakable laws. Think of it like cosmic billiard balls, every collision, every movement, predetermined.
A universe you could calculate. Very neat, very tidy.
Very mechanical.
And the implications for how people thought about God. You mentioned the clockmaker idea.
Exactly. This clockwork universe model naturally led to that concept of God as a deistic first cause. The master craftsman who designs and builds this perfect machine winds it up.
And then leaves it to run on its own.
Pretty much. God was seen as transcendent, completely separate from the creation, outside the day-to-day running of the universe. The universe was self-sustaining based on these perfect laws. God started it, but didn't need to intervene afterwards.
So God becomes quite distant in that view. Necessary to get things started, but maybe not involved in our lives or the ongoing processes.
That was the implication for many. It painted God as perhaps disengaged, separate from the world we actually experience.
And this reinforced that fundamental split, didn't it? A separate creator over here and a material, predictable creation over there.
Absolutely, a strong dualism. And it definitely fueled that perceived conflict between science and, well, any kind of spiritual experience or belief in an immanent divine presence. Science explained the how of the machine.
Leaving less and less room for the why or for any divine action within the world, it pushed God to the edges.
To the very beginning, essentially. A necessary initiator, but then the laws took over. It left many feeling the universe was maybe grand, but perhaps a bit cold, impersonal.
Okay, so that setup, that traditional view, really highlights the contrast with what we're about to explore. For such a long time, it genuinely felt like science was making the cosmos less mysterious, less spiritual.
And what's so fascinating is how successful that classical model was for the macroscopic world, the world of everyday objects and planets. Its power was immense.
But its limitations eventually became clear.
Profoundly so. When science started probing the very small, the atomic and subatomic realms, that neat, predictable clockwork picture it just fell apart. It couldn't explain the weirdness of quantum mechanics.
The billiard balls didn't behave as expected anymore.
Not at all. And it also struggled to account for things like consciousness, or that deep feeling of interconnectedness that many spiritual traditions talk about. Its success created its own boundaries, you could say, paving the way for something radically different.
Which brings us beautifully to David Bohm. He was quite a figure, wasn't he? A physicist, contemporary of Einstein, made real contributions to quantum theory.
Indeed. But Bohm was also a deep thinker, a philosopher in many ways, and he was really troubled by something he saw everywhere: fragmentation.
Fragmentation, what did he mean by that?
Well, he saw it in physics itself, these paradoxes like wave-particle duality, where something is somehow both a wave and a particle, depending on how you look, or the observer effect, where the act of measuring changes the outcome. He felt these pointed to a deeper issue.
Not just in physics, though.
No, he saw it mirrored in society and how we divide the world up into separate nations, separate disciplines, how we even see ourselves as separate from nature or mind separate from body. He thought our very way of thinking was fragmented, assuming reality is just a collection of separate bits.
And he thought this was a fundamental error.
Yes, he believed these paradoxes and divisions weren't inherent features of reality, but symptoms of our limited perception. His proposed solution was profound: his theory of the implicate and explicate orders.
Okay, let's unpack those terms. The explicate order, what's that?
The explicate order is basically the world as we usually perceive it, the world of separate objects existing in specific locations in space and time. It's the manifest reality, the unfolded reality, this microphone, the room we're in, distinct things.
The everyday world we navigate.
Exactly. What we typically call real.
And the implicate order, that sounds deeper.
Much deeper, according to Bohm. The implicate order is the hidden underlying reality. It's unmanifest, undivided, and fundamentally non-local. Think of it as the enfolded order, the ground from which the explicate order constantly unfolds or emerges.
Enfolded, like everything is tucked away inside it.
In a manner of speaking. And non-local means connections aren't limited by distance in the way we usually think. Things aren't fundamentally separate in the implicate order. Their apparent separation only emerges when they unfold into the explicate order. It's a realm of unbroken wholeness.
That's quite abstract. How did Bohm help people visualize this? I heard he used an analogy.
Yes, the hologram analogy is crucial here. Think about a standard photograph. If you cut it up, each piece just shows a fragment of the whole image.
Right, a corner of the picture, maybe an eye.
But a hologram is different. It's recorded on a plate using lasers. If you break that holographic plate into pieces, even tiny pieces, and shine a laser through any single piece,
you still see the whole image.
You see the entire image, yes. It might be dimmer or less detailed depending on the size of the fragment, but the whole is contained within each part.
Wow. Okay, so the universe, in the implicate order, is like that holographic plate.
That's the idea. The entire universe is somehow enfolded within every region of space and time. What we perceive in the explicate order as separate particles or events, say an electron here, a photon there, are not fundamentally separate.
They're more like projections,
Yes.
unfoldings.
Exactly. Projections or unfoldings from that deeper, interconnected, implicate reality. The whole is enfolded within each part. It's like seeing different patterns emerge on the surface of one continuous flowing substance.
So reality isn't static things, it's a constant unfolding.
Yes, and Bohm called this continuous dynamic process of enfolding back into the implicate order and unfolding into the explicate order the Holomovement. It's not a static state. It's a ceaseless flow, an ongoing creation. Reality as a verb, not a noun.
A verb. I like that. And this completely reframed how we might think about the divine, doesn't it? It moves away from that external creator model.
Completely. The divine is no longer the detached watchmaker, the builder separate from the building.
Instead, the divine could be seen as, what? The implicate order itself.
That's one powerful way to conceptualize it. The divine is the implicate order, the infinite, unmanifest, potential filled ground of all being, from which the manifest world, the explicate order, continuously emerges and into which it unfolds.
So God isn't out there, separate, but in here, as the very source and process of reality.
Yes, it shifts the focus from transcendence, God being wholly separate, to immanence. The divine as inherent within the process, woven into the fabric. The divine is the Holomovement, the ceaseless becoming, the ongoing unfolding of existence.
God is a verb, not a noun. The creative process itself.
Precisely. An active, dynamic principle.
That sounds remarkably similar to ideas in some mystical traditions, particularly Eastern ones.
It really does. Think of Hinduism's concept of Brahman, the ultimate, unchanging underlying reality, and Maya, the world of appearances, illusion, the ever-changing manifest world. Bohm's implicate and explicate orders offer a kind of scientific metaphor that resonates with that.
Or maybe Sufism's hidden and manifest aspects of reality.
Or Kabbalah's Ein Sof, the infinite unknowable from which everything emanates. There are definite parallels in seeing reality as layered, with a deeper source underlying the surface appearances.
What about Western traditions? Does it connect there?
Absolutely. It resonates strongly with pantheistic traditions. Panentheism, which is different from pantheism.
Pantheism being God is everything.
Right. Panentheism is more like everything is in God, but God is also more than everything. The universe is within the divine, but the divine also transcends the universe. Bohm's framework provides a way to think about that the implicate order is the source and container, infinitely greater than the explicate reality that unfolds within it.
So in this Bohmian view, what does spirituality become? Is it about belief systems?
Less about belief systems, perhaps, and more about perception and experience. Spirituality becomes the act of recognizing this underlying, undivided wholeness. It's about seeing through the illusion of separateness, our own separateness included.
So experiencing that interconnectedness, realizing we're part of the Holomovement.
Exactly. Perceiving ourselves not as isolated fragments, but as integral participants in this cosmic unfolding. It's a shift in consciousness, a way of seeing the implicate reality shining through the explicate world.
That's really something. The universe as a hologram, every piece holding the whole. And the divine as the dynamic unfolding itself. It feels less like an abstract concept and more like an invitation to experience reality differently.
I think that's precisely Bohm's intention. His work provides this amazing philosophical and scientific framework for a non-dual understanding of existence. It directly challenges our ingrained mental habits of breaking everything down into separate bits.
Which we do all the time, in science and life.
We do. Bohm invites us to see the seamless flow, the underlying unity. It's not just physics, it's a potential transformation in how we perceive ourselves and the cosmos.
Okay, that's Bohm's perspective. Now let's shift gears slightly, though maybe we'll find overlaps, to quantum field theory, QFT. You mentioned this is more mainstream physics.
Oh, absolutely. QFT is arguably the most successful, rigorously tested, and foundational theory in all of modern physics. It underpins the standard model of particle physics, which describes almost all known fundamental forces and particles with incredible accuracy.
It merges quantum mechanics and special relativity.
Yes, a major triumph. It gives us a consistent framework for understanding the subatomic world in a way that respects both quantum principles and Einstein's insights about space and time.
And its core idea is, well, it's another reality shaker, isn't it? It says the fundamentals aren't particles.
That's the mind-bending part. Forget the tiny billiard balls of Newtonian physics. QFT says the most fundamental building blocks of reality are not discrete particles, but continuous fluid-like entities called fields.
Fields. Like magnetic fields.
Sort of, but much more fundamental. Imagine a field for every type of fundamental particle. An electron field filling all of space, a photon field for light, quark fields, and so on. These fields permeate the entire universe. They are the bedrock.
So where do the particles come from? What's an electron, then, if not a tiny ball?
An electron, according to QFT, is a localized excitation, a vibration, a ripple, a concentration of energy in the electron field. Think of the ocean again.
Okay.
The ocean itself is the field. A wave, a ripple on that ocean that's like a particle. It looks like a distinct thing moving across the water, but it's just a temporary disturbance of the water, the field itself.
So particles aren't things so much as events or patterns in these underlying fields.
Exactly. They are quanta-discrete packets of energy vibrating within these universal fields. You, me, this equipment, the air, distant galaxies, fundamentally, we are all complex patterns of vibrations in these underlying quantum fields.
That completely dissolves the idea of solid, separate objects at the most basic level.
It really does. If everything is just an excitation in the same few fundamental fields, then the separation we perceive is secondary. At the deepest level, everything is interconnected because it arises from the same underlying stuff, these fields.
A single, interconnected, vibrant reality, not a collection of bits.
A cosmic web of vibrating energy, you could say.
And does this help explain things like quantum entanglement, that spooky action at a distance?
It makes it much more intuitive, actually. If two particles are created together, they are essentially two ripples originating from the same disturbance in a shared field. They remain connected through that underlying field no matter how far apart they travel in space.
Because they were never truly separate things to begin with.
In a fundamental sense, yes. Their connection is inherent because they are manifestations of the same unified field. It's not spooky action between separate things, but an inherent correlation within a single system.
Okay, that's one huge implication. What's the other big one you mentioned about empty space?
Ah, yes, the vacuum. Classically, we think of empty space as just nothing, a void, absence.
Right, emptiness.
QFT says, absolutely not. The quantum vacuum is not empty. It's a seething, bubbling cauldron of activity. It's what physicists sometimes call a plenum, a fullness, not an emptiness.
Full of what?
Full of potentiality and fleeting energy. Due to quantum uncertainty, even in the emptiest space, energy fluctuates wildly, giving rise to pairs of virtual particles that pop into existence and annihilate each other almost instantaneously.
So space is never truly quiet.
Never. It's a quantum foam, a sea of transient energy fluctuations. This isn't just theoretical. These vacuum fluctuations have measurable effects, like the Casimir effect, where two plates placed very close together in a vacuum are pushed together by the energy of the vacuum outside them.
Wow, so empty space is actually a source of energy, a creative ground.
Precisely. It represents the latent creative energy of the universe. It's the ground state from which all real particles ultimately emerge when enough energy is concentrated in one spot. It's like the universe has this baseline hum of creativity happening constantly, everywhere.
Okay, bringing this back to spirituality. If the universe is this interconnected web of fields, and even empty space is buzzing with potential, how does that reshape our concept of the divine?
Well, again, moving away from the external creator. If the universe is this single, unified, dynamic system of fields,
Then maybe the divine is that system.
that's a powerful possibility offered by this framework. The divine isn't a being who creates the fields, but is the totality of the fields, the unified, self-organizing, inherently creative matrix of existence itself.
So the creativity isn't imposed from outside. It's inherent within the system,
Yeah.
within the fields, within the vacuum.
Exactly. The creative power we might traditionally ascribe to a transcendent God becomes an immanent property of the universe itself, evident in the ceaseless activity of the quantum fields and the vacuum. The universe is inherently creative, inherently dynamic.
In spirituality from this QFT perspective, what does that look like?
It becomes, again, about experiencing this fundamental interconnection. It's the deep realization that you aren't just a separate self navigating an inert world.
But a pattern of energy, a vibration.
A transient, unique pattern of energy within this single living cosmic field. It means that feelings of unity, of connection to nature or others, aren't just sentimentality. They reflect the fundamental structure of reality. We are literally made of the same stuff as everything else, constantly interacting within these shared fields.
So the idea that everything, including us, is just a ripple on this universal ocean of fields, it really is mind-bending. And empty space being this hive of energy, it changes how you perceive the chair you're sitting on, the air you're breathing.
It paints a picture of a universe that is incredibly alive, vibrant, and interconnected down to its very foundations, far from the cold, dead machine of the old view.
And it really challenges our sense of being separate individuals, doesn't it? If we're all just patterns in the same fields.
It does. It suggests our boundaries are perhaps more porous, more conventional than fundamental. It points towards this deep underlying unity. Our individual consciousness might be seen as an emergent wave on that cosmic ocean, distinct, yet inseparable from the ocean itself. We are, in a very real sense, the universe experiencing itself locally.
It's remarkable how Bohm's ideas, coming from a more philosophical angle on quantum mechanics, and QFT, the hardcore physics framework, seem to point in such similar directions.
The convergence is striking, isn't it? Despite different starting points and technical languages, they both paint a picture of reality that is holistic, interconnected, and dynamic.
Not fragmented and static.
No, they both offer compelling scientific metaphors for a reality that is fundamentally unified, challenging those old dualisms we talked about.
Let's summarize those key shifts. The first one you mentioned is dismantling dualism.
Right. Subject-object, spirit-matter, mind-body, these heart lines start to blur. The observer and the observed aren't fundamentally separate in quantum mechanics, and QFT shows everything arising from the same fields. Consciousness and the cosmos appear less like separate categories and more like aspects of one underlying reality.
A shift from duality to holism.
Yeah.
What's the second big shift?
From a static being to a dynamic process. The divine isn't the unchanging monarch outside of time anymore.
But the process itself.
Oh.
Bohm's Holomovement or the vibrations of the quantum field.
Exactly. The divine is reimagined as the flux, the flow, the creative unfolding of the universe itself. It's constantly happening, constantly evolving.
You mentioned this connects to process theology.
Yes, very strongly. Process theology sees God as being in a dynamic relationship with the world, evolving with creation, not static and unchanging. God is affected by the world, and the world is affected by God in an ongoing cosmic dance. QFT and Bohm provide scientific concepts that resonate with that view of an intimately involved, dynamic divine.
And the third shift.
From transcendence to immanence. This is huge. The sacred isn't just out there in some separate heaven.
It's in here, woven into reality.
Yes, it's found within the fabric of existence. It's the unfolded potential in Bohm's implicate order. It's the vibrant energy and interconnectedness of the quantum fields. The divine is present here and now in every particle, every process, every moment.
Not something distant, but the very ground of our being.
The ground of being and the dynamic unfolding of that being. It means the universe itself can be seen as sacred, as the body or expression of the divine process.
It really is fascinating how these two very different scientific avenues, Bohm's deep interpretation and QFT's rigorous physics, lead to such similar places conceptually.
They both point towards a universe that is fundamentally alive, interconnected, and dynamic, not dead, separate and mechanical. It's a profound shift in our scientific story about what reality is.
It feels like science is offering us a new vocabulary, doesn't it? A way to talk about deep, perhaps ancient, spiritual intuitions about unity and flow, but with the precision and, well, the awe that comes from modern physics. It makes you realize how much our everyday senses miss.
It suggests our ordinary perception might only be scratching the surface of a much deeper, richer, more interconnected reality. It integrates awe and understanding in a powerful way.
So wrapping up this deep dive, let's be clear again. Our goal wasn't to scientifically prove God exists in the traditional sense. That was never Bohm's aim, nor is it QFT's purpose.
No, these are frameworks for understanding the physical universe. But they have, almost as a side effect, provided incredibly fertile ground for fresh spiritual and theological thinking.
They offer ways to think about those deep questions about divinity, connection, meaning that feel intellectually compatible with our scientific age. They help bridge that old gap.
By moving beyond the metaphor of the universe as a cold, deterministic machine.
And replacing it with metaphors of wholeness, holographic unfolding, vibrant fields, interconnectedness, and constant potential.
Science has, perhaps unintentionally, opened the door to a spirituality that feels deeply integrated with our best understanding of the cosmos. A spirituality grounded in the nature of reality itself.
Which leads to a final thought for you, our listener. This emerging vision, inspired by science itself, is not of a divine that is separate from us, judging from afar.
No, it's a vision of the divine as the very ground of our being, the very fabric of reality, an unfolding creative process.
In which you are not just a spectator, not just watching the universe happen.
You are an intimate, essential participant, a unique wave in that cosmic ocean, a vital note in that universal symphony.
And thinking about what that means, being an essential part of this unfolding divine process, is perhaps something profound to carry with you.